Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for December 17th through 23rd. This week I read 3 books, I watched 3 shows, and I listened to 1 book. For those of you who might be new to my channel, this background looks a little bit different than my usual background, and that's because I'm in my parents' basement because 'tis the holiday season and I came to visit them for said holiday. That being said, as soon as I finished editing this video, putting it online, doing the captions, and then making it live so you can see it, we're actually traveling back to where we actually live because we're going to spend the 25th with our roommate, which is something we haven't actually done before, which is going to be nice. Strangely enough, all of us come from the same place, which is about 2.5–3 hours away from where we currently live. We all come back here for the holidays. Her holiday schedule had to shift a little bit because of work this year, so we decided in solidarity to do the 25th with her. Because honestly, we don't care what day of the month we celebrate with various friends and family, which is why we had one celebration with my parents, and then yesterday we were with a bunch of Chad's family, and etc, etc. Also, this is not a posture I usually have in my videos, but the lighting has decided to do some weird things. It's going to look weird no matter what I do, but I think this is the best it's going to do. Outside has decided not to be very sunny at all, so it's not being very helpful. And then when I turned on the lights in this room, there's 4 of them on the ceiling, and one of them started to flicker as though it wanted to have its own rave, and now it's gone completely out. So this is what we have to work with. It's fine. The first book that I finished this week was a novella called The Only Safe Place Left is the Dark. This is an alternative history that is actually set about now, but somewhere in the late 90s a zombie apocalypse broke out, and our main character didn't actually notice for about the first 6 months because he's been living in a cabin in the woods by himself. He's been living there as an HIV positive man who recently just started a drug regimen that's actually keeping him alive, and previous to this he has had to bury a lot of friends as well as a lover. This means that throughout the 30 or so years of this apocalypse, he's been going out, finding the drug that he needs, storing a lot of it, just living in his cabin in the woods, trying not to make a lot of noise, and dealing with zombies if they happen to come by. But as we meet him, there is a knock on his cabin door which cannot precipitate anything good. What I really appreciated about this novella is how fast-paced it was. It did not spare any moment of its narrative. It was just straight into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and I actually really wanted to know what was going on with this character. We got to see some flashbacks with him and his previous partner and how he got to this stage of his life, and it was just fantastic. I really enjoyed this, which is funny because the other thing that I was reading at the same time was also zombie fiction, also queer zombie fiction, and I was not enjoying it. Which is really a shame because it's the second in a duology and I read the first during the Queer Lit Readathon. This one was called Timberdark. Like I said, it's the follow-up to Wranglestone, which is the first in this duology, and I enjoyed the first one well enough. I think I gave it like 3.5 stars. I'd have to look at my spreadsheet to remember exactly what I did. I enjoyed it well enough, but the writing in Timberdark just goes into such description that it doesn't need to go into, that by the time I get to the end of a paragraph I've already started thinking about other things, and then I have to bring myself back to what's going on in this book. It also seems incredibly slow-paced in juxtaposition to the last book I talked about, which is annoying because this book is over 400 pages. Being a sequel, I can't tell you too much about the plot, but I can tell you that it would have been so much better if these characters actually talked to each other instead of just kind of thinking that everything was going to be fine in this world that they're trying to navigate. And there were also certain things that happened in this book that just happened out of nowhere for apparently no reason that I could discern, and I just wasn't really enjoying it. There were things that could have been a nice big twist if they'd been alluded to even a little bit more before they happened, and then things that just happened and I was like, but why would that character have bothered to do that? I don't understand, and that's just annoying, and I don't like it. So needless to say, if you're going to pick up Wranglestone, just leave it there. You don't need to know what's next, just leave it there. Yesterday I read a graphic novel called Squire. This is a historical fiction graphic novel about this character who is a part of a class of human in this empire that is looked down on by the other people in the empire, and she decides that she wants to join the army to become a squire eventually, and then eventually become a knight, which is just heroic and exciting. People know the names of knights and their legendary weapons and that type of thing, but obviously you have to start at the bottom to get to the top. To do this, she actually lies about her ethnicity. She basically just wipes it off her papers, and people don't know, even though she has a tattoo, because the people she comes from actually like to tattoo their arms so that other people will know that they're the same ethnicity, but she just wears a bandage around it the whole time, so nobody she trains with knows that she's this class of person, even though they're occasionally being told terrible things about her class of people. This is all about War and Glory, but it's mostly about propaganda and not believing everything that people tell you, and how people can become incredibly bigoted for no reason if they're unchecked in what they say about different people, and it was just really well put together. I really enjoyed it. On to what I watched this week. I finished the most current season of Grey's Anatomy, which would be the 19th season, and as Grey's Anatomy usually does, there's things at the end of the season where you're like, okay, this finally happened, but there's also things that are happening that you're like, I need to know how this is going to resolve, and I can't because the first episode of the next season doesn't come out for at least another 3 months. I'm also going to be traveling at that point, so as I do with Grey's Anatomy, I'm going to have to wait until the entire season wraps and then eventually goes on a streaming platform I have access to, so I'm going to have to wait quite a while, which just sucks because near the beginning of this channel, 7 years ago, one of the first things I watched was Grey's Anatomy. At that point there were, I believe, 12 seasons out, and I went through those 12 seasons in about 3 months. So it's fun to continue watching the show because I do really enjoy it. This season had some definitely heartbreaking things happening in it, and I want to know what's going to be going on with all of the storylines that we currently have up in the air. We also finished the 7th series of Taskmaster and worked our way into the 8th series. We're about halfway through that one. There's nothing really I can say about these. I continue to enjoy them. The tasks continue to be weird and wonderful. One of the ones that sticks out in my mind from a recent episode is you had to make the most engaging thing for a toddler, and then they had a toddler come into the room and just play with whatever they'd left in the middle of the room. And it was just adorable because I was like, where did they get this toddler? Obviously this toddler knows Alex, the assistant to the Taskmaster, because she calls him Alex. She knows his name, but it's just like, is this one of his kids? Because he said that his own children call him Little Alex Horne because Greg Davies calls him Little Alex Horne. So I don't know. It probably wasn't one of his kids, but they acquired a toddler from somewhere, and she was adorable, and it was just fun to watch what happened. We also continued on with a few more episodes of Doctor Who. I think we watched 3, maybe 4 episodes, which included the Are You My Mummy 2-parter, which I had seen previously, so it was good to come back to it at the point in the show where it's actually supposed to happen, as opposed to before when I think people were just trying to show me highlights of why I might like the show, but if you watch the show out of order and out of context, it's harder to care. I mean, obviously this contained 2-parter, it's pretty easy to care about what's happening with those characters because you basically learn everything you need to know about these characters as you're doing it, but for the broader narrative of the show, if you just watch random episodes, you're not going to care as much, whereas if you start from the beginning, you get more into it. The Doctor continues to be delightful. I really like what Billie Piper's doing as Rose, and then also we've now met Jack, who I assume comes back up because people are obsessed with that character on the internet, and I just loved that he is just so certifiably a bi icon from the get-go. The audiobook that I read this week is one that I picked up specifically because it's being banned over and over and over again in the States, and I just wanted to see why for myself, especially because it's a book from 2004, and that was Crank by Ellen Hopkins. Now, because I was listening to the audiobook, I don't know this for sure, but given how long the audiobook was and how many pages a physical copy has, because I can see that on Goodreads, and because you could tell a little bit with how the narrator was narrating, I have to assume that this is written in verse. It's not rhyming poetry or anything like that, but I'm assuming it has a lot of line breaks to it because I believe this audiobook was about 4 hours, maybe 5 hours, but there's like 500 pages to it. So the only way that makes sense in my brain is if this was written as poetry. This book is about a young girl named Christina who hasn't seen her father in about 8 years and is going to visit him, and when she gets there, she comes to realize that he's not as great a person as she's built him up to be in her mind. You add to his lack of good influence her running into a boy that she really starts to fancy who also does some illicit materials, and then you have a spiral of sorts. This one was apparently written after the author's daughter went through something similar, and I think that she was just trying to capture the experience that her daughter had and kind of process it herself. At least that's what I took from just kind of some reading about it. I can see why some people would be upsetty spaghetti about this, but ultimately I don't think this was written in a way that is not appropriate for the audience it was intended for. It is also the first in what I believe is a trilogy. I think it's only a 3-book series. So although it left off at a little bit of a cliffhanger, I don't know if I really want to see what other destructive things this character is going to end up doing in her life. So I don't know if I'm going to continue, although I kind of want to because it makes book banners mad. Not to mention there are a few things about this that are a little bit outdated because this actually came out the year I graduated high school. So yeah, there's some language in here that isn't really appropriate from those standards, because at point she's talking about her queer older sister and then other people and using stereotypes to do that. But overall, this seems to be a pretty decent cautionary tale. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!